This is the fourth week. So, folks, we are back. I'm sorry for any of you who got caught off. We got kicked out of the studio, and there's no evidence that the studio ever existed, and nobody knows what happened. So, I created a new studio, sent the link to Ray, who's here, sent the link to Jake, who I'm sure will be here shortly. Our executive producer, the AI, Chris. Harris came in and he's not sure what happened either. So anyway, I guess we'll continue talking to you about the fan experience and sort of like how do you feel about the team going into the game and how do you feel about the team coming out of the game?
So, I was pretty excited. This was like my first, UFL, game to go to. And, the vibe was great. Like everyone was excited. The fans were just loving it. There, there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of hype for sure. One of the criticisms, though, and I didn't agree with it, was that they felt that Phillips was letting them be too arrogant, like when they scored a touchdown or how their sportsmanship is. For me, I felt it was just kind of traditional football. Football has always been kind of testosterone, macho type, like you get in there, you're like, oh, you want to kick some butt. Um,
Look who you're talking to. Do
yeah.
we ever?
My youngest son, like, I don't know how many times, like, he kind of stomps his foot at me and I'm like, pull up, son, come on. So, for me, that's just like the nitty gritty of it. So I'm not sure, maybe because of the politics with NFL, it's kind of toned down a bit, but I didn't see anything that I would consider inappropriate. It was just more like, hey, you scored a touchdown. You're going to kind of like, remember Deion Sanders used to do a little dance whenever he got in the end zone. So I didn't really see anything that I would say would be considered unsportsmanlike
Well,
per se.
the XFL was originally started when people started calling the NFL the No Fun League. But I have to tell you, for an older coach, Wade Phillips, and for the way this team played, I think they had a right to be a little excited
Yeah.
because everybody sold them short, including me. No one knew what this team was going to be like, and it seems like, well, someone did, and it was the team. They knew what they
Yeah.
were going to be because they came out and they played. And the beginning, I thought it was they were relying on speed and trickery, but they did a couple of trick plays. Both worked. Um, I thought they was. I mean, I don't think this is earth shattering, but to me, they were the surprise, pleasant team coming out of the weekend.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
and I'm not going to underestimate them again. Now, I know it was only 1 week, but on the presumption the teams usually look better going forward, they usually gel more, and the DC defenders usually defense is advanced. And I thought the DC defense actually played pretty well. And I didn't think San Antonio had any defense, but they had a pretty darn good defense here against a DC offense, which was touted as being pretty good and had some pretty explosive players. I think San Antonio has a lot to be proud of. And what I originally was going to call a gimmick offense, honestly, by midway through the second quarter, you know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of the old West Coast offense, the Andy Reid, the Bill Walshes, not as good necessarily, but I mean, at some point, I'm like, Jesus, who's this remind me of? And then I realized it's the greatest show on turf. This reminds me of Vermeil's Rams. And maybe I'm getting all carried away. Maybe the other teams were more banal. But I don't know. That's what I thought. What do you think, Jay?
And you know what, Ray? I just want to say I supported your Brahmas from the beginning. I on this exact same show said they're the biggest sleeper in the league, and I didn't. I don't know. I didn't have the utmost confidence in it when I said it at the time, to be completely transparent. But I from day one thought that they were a very intriguing team. And when you look at a team that has a guy in Marquez Stevenson, they've got Javontre Kirkland. Did I say his name right? John Trey Kirkland. You got Cody Latimer there. I mean, you got a lot of guys with speed, good pedigree. I mean, and you saw it. I mean, they ran a lot of motion and, like he said, some trickery. They were able to get the ball down the field. And then they probably have my favorite player in the entire league, and Anthony McFarland in the backfield, a University of Maryland guy. And so I was very impressed with them. I thought they put a well-rounded game together. And when you have an offense like that with a Wade Phillips defense, what can go wrong? And so they were able to do it at home. They were able to do it as huge underdogs. They were the biggest betting underdogs to win the championship this year. And I think a lot of people look at them differently now. I think they're legit contenders. And I think they have a lot to build off of. And so I don't know. My question to you, Ray, is what did you see? And, you know, are you going to make another road trip to go see them, maybe somewhere outside of San Antonio?
Well, I will say there was a lot of love for Wade Phillips, because if anyone knows, you know, he did coach the Cowboys for a while from 2007 2010. He replaced Bill Parcells. Unfortunately, you know, everyone has a falling out with Jones, and Jones went ahead and went with Garrett. I did not think the way Phillips got fired, I mean, that's a whole other story. We won't get into that. But, you know, but there was a lot of love for him, for sure. I would love to go do a mini road trip to go to Houston to see them play the Roughnecks. That was Phillips's former team that he was coaching. But unfortunately, you know, I work retail management, but we are going to try to do the April 20th Michigan game. That's going to be here in San Antonio. But yes, I would love to go, even if it's just to Houston. But the three players that I kind of wanted to point it out for sure. So, you know, let's, you know, our punter here, Brad Wing. So he was an undrafted, you know, free agent. He played at LSU. So the biggest thing, y'all all did see that fake punt and that 40-yard pass. That was amazing. Like
crazy.
Yes, crazy. Like when you're there, like, man, the crowd was feeling it.
And I'm not sure if you saw, I mean, there was a lot of sideline interaction. On the broadcast, you were hearing from the coaches and stuff. And one of the things that they were talking about when they were talking to both Brad Wing and Alex Millette, the center who caught that pass, was that play, first off, never completed the pass in practice ever once before. And second off, the guy that they threw to, the center who was lined up in the tight end position on the punt, was never the intended target, and he's never gotten a pass thrown to him before. And he kind of said he just got caught up in the moment. He caught the ball and he just didn't know what to do. He blacked out and just ran, and it worked.
I mean, the crowd like exploded. Like it was just like massive. Like people were just like, you know, high-fiving each other. Like, you know, parents are lifting their kids up. Like it was crazy. Like it really got the crowd going. And, you know,
clear my notes in order, just so that everyone can see the evolution. I said, Puka Williams, explosive. Then for the Brahmas, speed team. Then I'm like, Kiki Kutri, speedster. Then for the Brahmas, early trick play. And then my next thing, DC defense started taking over towards the end of towards midway through the first quarter, which is what I expected the story to be. My next note is, love the screens. West Coast offense, adjacent, early score, wide receiver, John Tree Kirkland, check. I mean, my notes just, you know, you could just tell you know, if you were an archaeologist and you're reading the cuneiform, you'd be like, what the hell happened to this guy? You'd think that I did, like, you know, a couple lines of coke around the third or fourth note there. Not that I would know. But yeah, this was something, and nobody's giving him credit yet. So I'm going to. The quarterback Garbers played a great game.
I will say this. Okay, so Chase Garbers, yes, we all know he was a free agent for Las Vegas Raiders. He takes risk, but there's a little bit of inconsistency. I'm not trying to be the frowny face here. So we need some finessing. But yes, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we'll see that throughout the season. Also, I might be pronouncing it wrong. Alize Mack, the tight end, phenomenal with Notre Dame. Phenomenal, right? He made the Mackey Award watch list for his sophomore through senior years. But he didn't live up to the hype in the NFL. So he can catch difficult passes, but there's no follow through with the blocking. But I think with Phillips coaching them, and him getting some work in, I'm hoping he can follow through, because yes, it's great you can catch a 20-yard, 30-yard pass, but you got to be able to follow through.
Absolutely.
So,
and who's that third player you wanted to highlight as well?
Well, he already mentioned Garbers, we mentioned Wing, and we mentioned Mac. So you got my three players right there.
Hey, and you know, I think those are great three players, and I'd like to just throw one more guy into the hat. Darius Phillips at cornerback. He had a big pick six. And I thought he played really good lockdown coverage. And I don't know. I thought that they're a really fun team. They got Destroying at kicker, who's obviously a big presence on social media, so he'll draw some eyes to the team. And I think all those eyes that they drew were earned and deserved. I think that they played very well, and I think for a San Antonio fan base that craves football,
Yes.
I think that this is something to be excited about. And if you didn't watch that game in week 1, I would say tune in a week 2, and I'll stand on my words here. I think they're going to surprise some people again.
Yeah, I think
for
that
sure.
DC started a lot the way Birmingham did. They seemed to be confident. They weren't really rattled. They were playing NFL style. They were settling for field goals instead of being aggressive. And I think that hurt them. And then they had a turnover in the second quarter when they were down 6-14. And then there was a coach's challenge at 18-20, which took points off the board, which was, that was tough, but that's going to happen. It was interesting to see a coach's challenge. Generally speaking, I thought the transparency of the review process was amazing. I love that they had Ed Blandino. I think it's Ed. Dean Blandino, right? Sorry. Not only could you talk to him during the game, but you saw his thought process, who he was talking to. I did enjoy that, though I know that Jake has some comments, and I agree with him on that everyone sort of being mic'd up at the same time. But I don't know what else to say other than that the Brahmas won in all 3 phases of the game. They won on offense, they won on defense, they won on special teams, and I'm going to give a fourth. I'm going to give a fourth and fifth. The fourth is trick plays or being aggressive, and coaching. They believed in what they had. So that maybe that's something from maturity, but whatever it is, they believed in what they had, and then we talked about it. They didn't. We talked about when Jake was positive, and I'm like, I'll say this. They have a very small coaching staff, which means that either they're very confident and they're all staying on message and they believe in what they're doing, or they don't have any idea what they're doing and they're holding their noses. And after 1 week, it absolutely looks like the former. So listen, kudos to San Antonio, kudos to the Brahmas, kudos to the coaching staff and the players. And DC was a favorite, and they look myopic now. They look one-dimensional. Good defense and incompetent offense. Cam Harris was their workhorse, but frankly, didn't look like, sort of looked a little bit like an old gray mare half the time.
Yeah. I think that we've talked about this game a little bit, and I think a lot of this is all positives on the Brahmas. So I'd like to ask you one last question, Ray. What's your message to the San Antonio Brahma Nation?
We're coming for y'all. Remember us, the Countdown City, 2-0. We got this. You will remember us. We're putting our mark out there. We're no longer going to be the big slow. We're gonna be top dogs. Move over H-Town, move over Dallas. We're coming. That's all I got.
We weren't slow. You were the big fast, if anything. So, so safe fast to you. Thanks for coming in. Thanks to our mutual friend. I don't know if we could say his name, so I won't. And
watching Raw right now.
if you want to be our San Antonio insider in the future, just let us know. You know how to reach me now. So
for sure, this was fun. I liked it.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ray. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I loved hearing about your experience there.
All right,
make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notifications bell. And
210, man, 210. Okay,
that's right. Make sure make sure all your family watches too. Because you're in Texas, you must have like 9,000 relatives.
I'm also from the Hispanic culture. I've got like 30 cousins. So
perfect. That's even better. And they all have 30 cousins. This is like a Breck commercial on steroids.
Yes, and they love wrestling and they love the UFL. So yes.
And then they love me. Then they love me. All
for
right,
sure.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Y'all take care. All right. Bye.
Have a good one.
So that was Ray, obviously a person on the ground, and very excited there in San Antonio with reason. I mean, I think we covered that game, and I think we're both excited about San Antonio.
Yeah, and I think we left out DC, so I'll just put a couple things out there about DC before we move on. I think Jordan Ta'amu at the beginning of the game looked very, very good. I think he completed his first 9 or 10 passes in a row, and he was really standing tall in the pocket. They were using him a little bit on the run. And then he got hurt in the third or fourth quarter, and it kind of went downhill from there. So I think there's a lot to grow there. And I think the connection between him and Kiki Cutie, as you mentioned, he's fast, he's got sure hands, he's great in the slot. So I think as the season goes, they have that relationship. And I think both of those guys having good NFL pedigree. I mean, Jordan Ta'amu learned under Patrick Mahomes for a little while, bounced around the league. Kiki Cutie had some really good starting opportunities in Houston. I do think DC has a chance to turn it around. And I think we really like their defense. And I think their defense let down a little bit. But I will shout out probably my favorite player on their defense, DJ Swearinger. And he was all over the field. He made a bunch of big hits. So it's not all doom and gloom for the DC defenders. I do think that they have the opportunity to bounce back. It's a short season compared to the NFL, but it really, truly is a long season. All you have to do is go 1-0 the next week.
That's right. Well, every game does matter. Really does. Oh, and we have another comment from our old friend, Charmaine Marie. Hello, Charmaine. How are you?
Thanks for joining us, Charmaine. And let's get 2 more commenters, and I'll bring my dog Tucker on screen for everybody. So
nice.
Let us know that you're watching.
Everyone loves dogs. All right. So back to the opening game, Birmingham versus the Renegades. So we talked about, the Birmingham defense looked solid and opportunistic. There was an early turnover. I thought that the Matt Corral to Sternberger, no surprise there, was a very solid connection. For a secondary league that looked like a very, I don't know if it was quite a Brady to, a Gronk kind of thing, probably not. But you have your sort of pedigree, 6'4", 220 quarterback, to your like 6'5", 240, 250 tight end, covering the middle of the field. Obviously has some speed, doesn't go down easy with the first tackle. And there was one particular pass where he thread that ball right in the needle. Like, he threw it to the one place where only Sternberger could catch it. So Sternberger's been recruiting some players, or trying to recruit at least interest. And I don't know, he put on a show in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and we kind of knew Sternberger was going to be a big part of their offense, and as you mentioned, he really is a big advocate for the league. But I think their offense really has a lot of potential. We already mentioned their running game. We mentioned Deion Kane, but on top of that, they've got big receivers in Marlon Williams and Benjamin Victor. I was very impressed with Benjamin Victor, the former Raven, and I think Amari Rogers is a guy who Clemson alum. He was their return man. He's a speed guy I'd like to see incorporated more. And same with Gary Jennings. I think they have the best receiving core in the entire league. And switching over to the defensive side, I think Scooby Wright was very, very impressive. And more than just that, here's a Tucker's toy. He is going crazy. I'm sorry if you hear him in the background, but I think more so than just Scooby Wright, who's all over the field making big plays. I think they had a lot of guys like Kenny Robinson, who he brought big physical, aggressive play to the field. And I've always been a fan of him dating back to his West Virginia days, and he's bounced around the league a little bit. He was impressive. And then the big boy up front, Carlos Davis, I recall him having a big sack. I don't remember if that was the strip sack that they have, but Carlos Davis, big boy, he was very successful wearing 96 on that D-line for them, generating a lot of pressure. And I don't know. I was just all around, I was impressed by them. I don't know if you have any more thoughts. I'm just trying to see if I have anything else that I wanted to mention. But
I do a few. First of all, I want to thank the viewers who came back, because we had double digits, and 7 of you have found your way back. So thank you, Charmaine. We're pulling for you generally, right? It's generally. I think I remember her name. But yeah, this game. So there was an early interception by Arlington, but I don't put that on Corral. That was totally a bobble from the wide receiver. I don't remember who the wide receiver was. It probably doesn't matter. But it was a defensive battle. It was 3-3 into the second quarter. Scooby had obvious explosiveness. Perez does seem to have good awareness, but he sort of lost it somewhere along the way. Corral has legs when needed. And then there was a safety named Tillman, who attacked he basically had a long touchdown pass to Isaiah Winston, and then, which was a trick play, maybe sort of in this offense. I'm not sure what counts as a trick play, because you have those 2 forward pass allowances, but this seemed more like a trick play, like a flea flicker. Well, not flea flicker, but a backwards pass. And then Arlington went for 2, so we were seeing some of the decisions. They put in Lindsey Scott as the quarterback for that, who converted. So a little bit of the two-headed quarterback paying off for them.
But we did see them bring him in and have some snap count problems, a false start that pushed them out of that. I think it was a 4th and 1 and backed them up. So I'm not a big fan of the 2 quarterback thing. And I do think if they want to use Lindsey Scott, he's an explosive player that'll be very good and beneficial in this type of league, in this style of format. But I do think that they need to go one or the other. And I don't know, man. I do think that they were a little bit sloppy. And first off, let's go back to the comments. Charmaine, happy your daughter is feeling better. And Tater Tot, thank you for coming back. The screen crashed for all of us. So we're just happy that you were able to figure it out. It was most definitely not you. If anybody, it's me. I have probably the worst luck in the world. But we're happy that you're back. We're happy to be back. And I think I want to mention their defense, because I think when we talk about Arlington, we were really high on their defense. And there were a couple guys that were a little bit quiet. And so, I'm not trying to put any doubt or put anybody down. I thought Vic Beasley was a little bit quiet for a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
I was really high on Donald Payne, but Markel Lee, who also a former NFL guy, I believe he was Wake Forest, played for the Raiders. He was all over the field. I really liked how Markel Lee played, but I think he overshadowed Vic Beasley a little bit. But we can't all be doom and gloom here with our Arlington. And I actually really like the way that Delonte Hood played. Delonte Hood was really aggressive in press coverage. He's also a very fast cornerback, and I think that's going to be helpful against a lot of other teams. And I think with a few slight adjustments, they have Luis Perez, who's proven a winner. So I do think that they can make it work. Their offensive line really is solid. They've got a lot of big Oklahoma boys there. Drew Samia, Bobby Evans, Adrian Ely. So they've got some guys, they've got the pieces, and they had a really tough week 1 matchup in probably the odds-on favorites to win the whole thing. So I don't know if you have any further thoughts here, but I do think that this game was one that was interesting to see. And I guess we'll give a little shout out to Taylor Russolino, the kicker, who I thought he had a solid game.
Yeah, no, we saw both teams use 2 quarterbacks. Adrian Martinez had a run. He got bumped up on the run. He hurt his knee. It looks like it wasn't anything serious. And I'm only judging that because he was still out on the field and, congratulating the other team at the end of the game. We haven't got any injury reports or anything like that since then. But right after that, they had another run. I'm not sure if it was a design run. So Perez ran right after that. So wait, Martinez? No, he's on Corral's team.
Tater Tot, we're talking about the Arlington game, the first game of the night or
Right.
of the weekend. And I think we are getting to wrap it up, but let us know what you thought. I thought it was a decent game for the first game, and I thought the crowd was really fun to watch. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Perez was efficient in the first half. There was a Arlington interception at a critical time. Dean Cain had a pretty impressive TD catch. And then there was a second TD to Person. And then they went for 2, and Gary Jennings converted that. So, there were definitely good things there. But this game, I thought it was the one that played out the way you thought, that the team stuck to itself. One team, if it continued to play good defense and its offense was competent, they would get a comfortable lead, and that's exactly what happened. Birmingham stayed ahead. Some of the things I was surprised about, I didn't find the lines seem to be that strong or that cohesive. The running backs sort of seemed to be a little bit weak. Arlington was under 60 yards rushing. At the time, I thought that was surprising, but most of the team seemed to be there, and the quarterbacks did a lot of the running. So it seems like a quick catch game. The first review was called correctly. There was we saw just some things interesting about, the strategy in the game and how it would play out. But, then there was a fourth quarter interception, for Birmingham, and that pretty much ended the game. So I was very happy then at 1-0, at 27-14 for that game. And that was my last predicted win of the weekend, when I ended up going 1-3. So then we moved to St. Louis versus Michigan Panthers. Now, this game came on in progress, 9 minutes and 14 seconds left in the first quarter. I don't know how much to read into this. They do the same thing in the NFL, but when there's only 2 games, you think you could wait a few minutes to start the game so people could watch it. It's not a ringing endorsement for me from a network for their new product. I don't know if you thought anything about that.
Yeah, and I mean, let's really first acknowledge Tetu Tertat. Right now, this podcast, we're only talking about football. This is going to be UFL here. My father over here, he talks about a lot of other stuff, WWE and Greek mythology and a whole bunch of other stuff on a number of platforms. If you're into MMA, you can definitely follow me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. I've been talking MMA, and I have a podcast where I've done interviews in the past. I haven't really done it recently, but we've been thinking about bringing it back. So definitely check it out on other things. But here we're talking about UFL once a week. You'll see us Monday nights at 7:30 recapping what happened the weekend before. But I think when we talk about this game specifically, what you have to mention is Jake Bates. And that's kind of the reason why I'm wearing my Ravens hoodie today. My dog's name is Tucker, so you got to shout out Justin Tucker. I mean, and what Jake Bates did was he almost beat Justin Tucker's NFL record in the longest kick ever. He kicked a 64-yard field goal in the exact same stadium that Justin Tucker kicked his 66-yard field goal that was record-breaking. I watched a video on TikTok that actually showed both of them, and it was pretty much the same exact kick put in the same spot. And I actually think if Jake Bates was 3 or 4 yards back, it still would have gone in. It was a crazy kick.
He had plenty of leg, and he made it twice because there was a timeout called the first time. And
this is a kid that's not done a single field goal since high school.
The Detroit Lions has already contacted Michigan about his availability.
And I'm sure after that performance, a guy who played soccer in college and he was a kickoff specialist. I mean, with the way the NFL is changing their kickoff rules, the way the UFL is changing kickoff rules, he's a guy that's going to have a lot of value going forward. And the fact that he did it not once but twice, as you mentioned, that's very impressive in its own right. It won the game. It was in a high-pressure situation. And this is a guy that I would definitely expect to see in the NFL.
Yeah, now this was a game where it actually looked like it was going to be very similar to the first game, and it ended up not being at all. But at halftime it was 3-0. St. Louis was definitely sticking to their game plan, even though Michigan had achieved 2 turnovers. There was a pitch and carry, which was probably the best offensive play up to that point. Then they did a 1-point conversion. The Michigan, I think, running back Hill looked very good. I mean, he was probably the most outstanding running back of the game. Again, I'm not sure if he got luckier. They ran the screen well. And yes, Jake Bates, though, was the big star of the game. And you liked Michigan a whole lot more than I did. And Michigan pulled the upset win. And I picked St. Louis. So, listen, every team I picked other than Birmingham lost. So we can just skip with that immediately.
Yeah, and I think if we want to give Michigan their props because it was a tight game, it was a hard win. You're facing a guy in A.J. McCarron that has lots of NFL experience. You're playing with a guy in E.J. Perry who does not have that same NFL experience, and they were hard-nosed. I mean, you saw a guy in Trey Quinn who played a little bit with Washington Commanders. He was really good with strong hands across the middle of the field. You see other guys like Devin Ross and Devin Gray. The Devins getting involved in the game. And I think furthermore, you see their defense was pretty strong. I mean, Nate Brooks, Breland Speaks. I'm trying to think about who else was really big. Noah Dawkins. They had a lot of guys who they generated pressure. They were strong up front. And I don't know. I thought the Michigan team, they played together. They played with that hunger. And they had that dog in them. They really epitomized the opportunity that the UFL has been saying is what they're all about. And so I think it was great to see how they were able to fight hard, persevere, and they're a team that I don't know if they're going to win the whole thing, but they're going to compete in every single week. And I think if we switch over, I think if we talk a little bit about St. Louis, I mean, they were expected to be the favorite. And Wayne Gallman Jr., the former Giant, he wasn't really able to get involved in the game. I like A.J. McCarron, despite him being a Bengals guy, but I thought he was a little cocky and arrogant. He kept saying, give me the ball, let me make the play. And it's like, buddy, you haven't really made many plays. You don't have that many points on the board. And what's even crazier is he made a couple really good throws. They have some really big receivers. And Tucker, chill, bro. But Marcel Aitman made a couple really big catches.
Fan over there.
Huge, I guess. I mean, wow, he's throwing the ball to himself. Maybe they should put him in at quarterback, some Air Bud stuff. But I don't know. He had some big guys, and they made some good catches. I think Darius Shepard had a good game. Marcel Aitman made a crazy catch on the sideline. Hakeem Butler was playing pretty solid. He was a former Arizona Cardinal player. But, I mean, Marcel Aitman and Hakeem Butler are both 6'5". Throw them the ball. Give them a chance to get it. And I don't know. I was a little bit let down with A.J. McCarron, the 2-time national championship winner's performance in a game that they probably should have won.
Yeah, I kept waiting for St. Louis to turn it on like Birmingham did, and they didn't. And I think we were paying attention to the wrong quarterback with the initials. Uh,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, and there was one point where he was like something like 10 for 12,
Yeah.
with no interceptions and a touchdown. So he got a little bit more erratic in the second half, but they were they were being a little bit more aggressive, and I think that worked for them. Being a little bit more aggressive, I think, works in this league. And if you just stick to your NFL game plan and your offense isn't clicking, that's not a formula for success apparently in this league. Your offense at least has to be competent, because all of the defenses looked competent. But I think that's probably enough about that game. I'm sure the folks in St. Louis are disappointed, but I mean, I think going in, listen, neither one of us was an expert in this league going in. Neither one of us was an expert in the XFL nor the USFL. So we were just going on, what we thought we knew of players, what we thought of coaching staffs, sometimes just where they played college, who played together. It was a bunch of speculation. But, you know,
Oh,
I
and
think
before we
both.
move on, I do want to
Yeah.
give a shout out because we were super negative to St. Louis, and their defense was in it. They kept it in the whole game.
Yeah.
We don't need to go too into deep. I mean, I think Willie Harvey Jr. at middle linebacker played a good game, and really, I thought Ben DeLuca at safety. That's a guy I used to love watching play in college, and he's a guy that I thought he was all over the field. I saw him playing a little bit of cornerback. He's naturally a safety. I don't know. It was a good defensive game, and there's a lot of room for growth. So I do think it's time maybe to move to the next game, but we got to give credit where credit's due.
I just want to say that I think that both of us felt that St. Louis was a little bit overrated going into this. And that prediction, while it turns out to maybe have been true after week one, was as uneducated as all the other picks. So maybe it was just luck and bad luck for them. Anyway, yeah, so there's one game left, and that's Memphis at Houston. The Houston defense looked great. Unfortunately, nothing else for them looked great. The Memphis, they look just good enough to be better than Houston. I actually called this game. I know you don't want me to be negative, but this game was a dreary game, and this was a difficult game to get through. Thank goodness for the Brahmas.
Yeah, and you know what? This is the one game I didn't watch live. Shout out to ESPN that if you didn't watch any of the games, they actually put out a really good extended highlights version of the game. It was about 17 minutes, and I actually felt like I saw the entire game just by watching that 17-minute clip of it. And they did it for every single game, so that's a very good way to watch a condensed version of the game if you don't get to it live. And I think your analysis is pretty spot on. I mean, from what I saw, it was very defensive. Jarrett Garantamo, I know you were a little bit disappointed with him. I think my expectations were a little bit level set. I think they had a lot of injuries going into the game. I think that he was not really necessarily the expected starter. I think a lot of people thought Reed Sinnett would be the starter there, or even Nolan Henderson. And so I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he was playing, but it just seemed like they couldn't get their running game off the ground. I think Reuben Foster, unfortunately, he got hurt towards the end of the game, but he had a great game, a fumble recovery, an interception. He was all over the field making tackles. And I do think this is a team that might struggle down the stretch. I think they're a little bit thin. I think that they have a guy in Justin Hall at receiver who I think that they like a lot. But outside of that, I mean, they're going to have to rely on their running game, which in this league, we haven't seen great offensive line play. So we will give a quick shout out to their running back core because they've got three guys, Mark Thompson, Tion Evans, as well as probably one of the better names left in the league. And what I forget his first name, but his last name is Pleasure. They're going to have to rely on that running game. Their defense was able to hold their own. But, I mean, when you look at the Memphis Roughnecks, I mean, they were rough to play against, and they had a great first half. I think
Memphis Showboats, Houston Roughnecks.
Well, yeah, showboats. They didn't showboat enough. That's a very good point. Very stupid comment on by me. But I thought, but I think Memphis, they came out really strong in the first half. It seemed like they died down and came out flat in the second half. But I was very impressed with Case Cookus. He looked like he was very confident in the pocket. He knew when to step up and make a throw. And I saw him make one crazy pass on the highlights where he was getting sacked, falling to the ground. He just kind of like flicked it out there. And the receiver also came back to the ball, made a diving catch. And so I was fairly impressed with Case Cookus and Darius Victor at running back. He ran pretty hard. But I think for them, where they're going to make their money And again, we'll shout out their receivers real quick. Jonathan Adams and my boy Vinny Papel. I thought they actually played pretty well. A lot of highlights from both of them. And also Sage Surratt, he made a couple big catches for them. But their bread and butter is going to be their defense. And what I like the most about them is I don't know anybody on their defense. None of them are really huge notable names. And I think similarly to Michigan, this is going to be a team that has that dog in them. They're a team they're going to fight. And they're going to fight to the bitter end because they want their opportunity. And so that's what I've got to say about Memphis. This game, again, I didn't watch live, but I do want to see what Memphis looks like next week. Houston, we'll have to see what happens. I think there might be a quarterback battle going on in practice, but I kind of just said a lot. So you watched it live. Let us know some of your closing thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I mean, Guarantano was not impressive. Cookus, I thought was pretty efficient and at times pretty impressive. Memphis, to be honest, didn't look great on offense or defense, but they looked good enough on defense, and they looked good enough on offense, but not so good. I mean, I would say that they were like, they reminded me of Birmingham's B team, basically. They play the same kind of game, but they weren't nearly as cohesive. Houston, solid defense. But if Reuben Foster isn't on that field, I have no idea what their defense is going to look like. Reuben Foster was the standout. If you can be the MVP on a losing team and still be the MVP of a game, it's Reuben Foster. But I think the coaching staff really did a bad job for Houston. I don't usually second guess coaches. I'm not that smart. But when it was 18-12, they went for 3. And I get it. You want to be within a field goal. But your offense has been anemic. It's stunk. So you're at some point you're going for something big. So I would have rather gone for one big play, or Hail Marys to get the 6, and I would have taken the 1 point or the 2 here. I probably would have, because either one, 6 gets you a win.
And you know what? I think you're right there. I think, you want to take that 3-point play, but a 10-yard one play down is a very difficult play to make. I think you go for 1 and you score a touchdown and you're guaranteed a touchdown gets you that lead. You can go for 2 and get the field goal lead that you're desiring. And I thought the play call was just god awful. I mean, they just ran a very simple smash concept.
Right.
And I don't really care what level of football this is. If you're running a simple smash play, what do you expect? I mean, these guys have played football their whole life. I played 4 years of football and I knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah. But wait, it gets worse. So in this league, one of the options is, even if you screw all that up, if you screw the pooch, you can go for a 4th and 12. Now, there was 5 minutes and 29 seconds. And the commentary, I believe they asked Monaco, what do you do here? Do you go for the 4th and 12 here? And he said, no, it's way too soon for that. And I'm like, no, it's way too soon for that in the NFL. In the NFL, 5 minutes and 29 seconds is an eternity. In this game, 5 minutes and 29 seconds is going like this. It's going quick. For those who don't see, I snap my fingers. It goes quickly. So they didn't go for 4th and 12. Listen, I get that their offense stunk, but it was, as far as I was concerned, it was desperation time. So they're going to play the field position game, right? Wrong. They did a squib kick. Not even an onside kick. They did a squib kick that the hands team picked up at the 40 and ran it back, or the 37, ran it back to the 50. So then you give the Memphis team great field position, almost guarantees them a field goal. But wait, there's more. So Houston's defense stands them up, so they're just in field goal range. Memphis goes to kick a field goal. They miss it, but there's a penalty on Houston, so it's a first down for Memphis. So there you go. And we saw the whole review. The refs got that penalty right. There was absolutely a penalty. And Memphis held on to win the game. Ugly game. Bad calls. Bad coaching. Bad execution. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to say Memphis didn't win the game, but they barely won the game because Houston did help them a lot in losing the game, especially the offense and the coaching staff. And their time management, even up to the commentary booth, seems to be an NFL mentality and not this quicker, more fast-paced game. So that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing from it. That the experts are still very much learning this game at the same time we are.
Yeah, and I think in this game it's It's geared towards offensive firepower. I think there's going to be a lot of different perspectives and opinions, and I don't think there's going to be one right way of doing things. I mean, go for the 1, the 2, the 3. I think the 1's obviously the safest play. The 3's the most risky play. Is the 2 the sweet spot? I don't know if it necessarily is a play-by-play game basis. I think that there's a lot that teams are still figuring out. I was surprised to see the number of field goals, and I think if we're talking very generally, I mean, we hit on it. The offensive play was a little porous on the offensive line specifically. It's hard to get big guys that can really move and, block, which is, obviously the number one job of the offensive line. I thought that in general, there were a lot of penalty flags thrown. I think obviously the ref's job is to, make sure the rules are enforced. I think it's the player's job to play within the rules. And I think that there were a lot of penalties that definitely hindered a lot of these offenses from making plays. That'll probably get fixed with time, but I don't know. You hit on it a little bit. I think this is something that we've got to mention before we're done with today's talk. I think there's a lot going on the broadcast. I like that the quarterback was mic'd up, but he had a hot mic way too much. I like that they were talking with the coaches, a little bit of a hot mic too much, and there's also a lot of echo. So one of the few things in the broadcast that I think that they can clean up is that. And I did like the sideline commentary where they're interviewing players and coaches and whatnot. I thought the coaches was much more interesting to hear than the players. Yeah. And especially when you're picking players who are out of breath. I think it's cool to get that, behind the scenes content, that really nitty gritty, but you need someone that's going to be able to speak in complete sentences and not, yeah, so good. And I think you see that with the Alex Millette touchdown on the fake punt. I think they went on the field to interview him, which I thought was a cool concept, but that's a big man who just ran 50 yards and caught a pass for the first time in his career. He had no idea what to say. He just screamed, "Let's go Brahmas!" And then you interview him at the end of the game, and he's able to form thoughts and full sentences. And that was a much better interview to me than when it's directly in the moment and they just don't know what to say. It's too much of an adrenaline rush to me. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I do. The high point with this, which is probably also a low point for the team itself, is that one of the reporters was interviewing Skip Holtz at the time, or not Skip Holtz, Skip Holtz at the time, and he realized the game had started and goes, "I have to go back to head coaching now." I mean, he was busy talking while he should have been coaching. So, I mean, it was funny. Everybody laughed, but I mean, but not really. His job isn't to be there. The other thing is, as a new viewer, it took until you pointed it out that I realized what was happening. I just thought the production quality was bad, that they had too many mics open and stuff like that. I didn't realize that all those mumbling and bumbling I'm hearing is because they have everyone mic'd up and all the mics are on all the time. So they have to have a sound director to turn off, all of the mics but one at a time, unless there's like some sort of team celebration or something. But even then, I mean, you're risking curses and things like that. So I think it's one of those things that sounded like a good idea, but maybe isn't such a good idea. But it's a good idea to be able to turn it on if you want. But I don't really think it added much. And once I realized what I was listening to, it was a little bit garbled. But I agree with you. The coaches, that was interesting. Like, them deciding what the play call was and the situations, that was interesting. And then when there was a call on the field to go to the refs, that was interesting. But it was very confusing if you can still hear the coaches, the players, and the refs conferring at the same time,
plus the commentary commenting on it.
Right.
And you know what? I will say that all the insights, I think we hit on it a little earlier with Dean Blandino. I thought that was amazing. Yeah. I thought it was really nice seeing, that thought process. You hear him communicating with the refs down on the field. You hear them talking back to him. You're seeing the angles that he's looking at. I mean, that's something that as a football nerd, you want to see. And I think that's their target audience, us football nerds, the people that really crave and devour football. And I think that was probably my favorite part with the refs and with the coaches too. Like, I think it could have been.
I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt, but the best line of the night was when they said, "Do you think if he challenged that, it would have been overturned?" And Dean Blandino goes, "I know it would have been overturned because I'm the one who would have overturned it. I'll tell you why."
and he's able to give you those explanations, and he's very well spoken. Shout out Dean Blandino. I mean, he's a guy that does this for the NFL. This is his living. I mean, it was just very good by him. And I think if you go back to the coaches, I mean, as a football nerd myself, a backup quarterback on a winless team, I found it fascinating to hear the play calls, and I'm sitting there in my head challenging myself. What is this play call? And then I'm sitting there, oh, it's a bunch formation with a strong right, and it's going to be a power run to the right. I mean, and just whatever the play was, you're able to hear it and break it down and take it in as a fan and as a football geek. And as a former player, I'm able to kind of live vicariously through it. So I did find it very fascinating. I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I think they will clean a lot of this up. But I think that for week 1, maybe they should have had a little bit more stuff cleaned up going into it. I just hope that people enjoyed what they were watching. People continue to watch so the league can continue to go and grow and have success.
All right. So let's start to wrap it up. So I don't think it's any surprise. Pleasant surprise of the week for me, San Antonio. Disappointment of the week for me was offenses generally, but especially Houston and DC tied for me for a disappointment of the week.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you fully on the Brahmas. I really liked how they played. I think when you look at it, I think I did expect more from DC, but I think it's hard for me to say not watching it live, but from what I saw and from what I've read and from what I've heard, I think Houston was a little bit of a letdown. I think they have a lot of fans there that were really hoping for a big team and a lot of success. But I think we should get into talking about next week and give some predictions because we did so great last week.
Excellent. I think we both went 1-3. So
yeah, and I wish I kind of stuck with my gut from those original episodes breaking down the teams because I probably would have gone with the Brahmas, and I kind of just went with the narrative there. So let's really see what we got this week. So the first matchup that we have at noon Eastern Standard Time in Memphis, Tennessee on Saturday is going to be the Brahmas versus the Showboats. And I'm going to just go off here. I think the Brahmas are going to destroy them. I think that they put up 30 this week. I think they're going to have the most points out of any team. I think they're going to run some trickery. And I think it's going to be a really fun game if you're a Brahma fan.
Hook 'em horns. I'm all in on the Brahmas this week too.
And so that's going to be your first game at noon on Saturday. I hopefully will be able to watch that. Now, if we move forward at 8 p.m., a big jump. This week they were right back and forth or right in front of each other, but this one's at 8 p.m. in St. Louis. I'm excited to see what that crowd in St. Louis does. We got Arlington versus St. Louis. You take this one away first.
Wow. 2 teams that disappointed. I think that St. Louis in home is going a night game. I think they're probably going to get a big crowd. I think that'll be the difference. I really couldn't tell. There wasn't much difference in their team playing, but I think AJ McCarron has a lot to prove. And if he wants to prove that Cincinnati will take him back as a third string quarterback, he better play better than he did. So I'm going to take St. Louis. I will not be watching this game live because it's WrestleMania week, but I will watch the game Sunday morning. So I'm going with St. Louis.
And you know what? I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I was very disappointed with AJ McCarron's performance. I thought that a lot of the things that he was saying on the sideline sounded more like a disease than a star quarterback. And I was very disappointed with the way he carried himself. So I'm going to take Arlington. This is not Birmingham this week that they're playing. Give me Arlington on the road. I think you're right. I think the St. Louis fans are going to keep them in it till the last second. I think this is going to be a defensive-heavy affair. I would be very surprised if one of these teams scores more than 24. I think this is a game that might be like a 21-18 finish. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of random scores with these 1, 2, and 3 extra point plays. But
well, you keeping track of these picks, right?
I'll take Arlington. Oh yeah.
And you'll keep track of our picks during the course of the year. Okay, well, good.
Of course, and we'll throw records out there, and we'll see who can get it better at the end. But I'm going on the opposite side with Arlington here.
You know what? I don't feel bad about your pick. I just I already said what I saw. So yeah, what's the next game?
Yeah, and so I just took 2 road teams in a row. But starting on Sunday at noon from Ford Field, Birmingham Stallions versus the Michigan Panthers in probably what will be the game of the week. I'll start here. I really want to take Michigan. I really want to say that it's going to be Michigan. I just can't get around to it. I do think Birmingham is going to be the better team here with the better offense, with more weapons. And I do think Michigan is a solid team, but I think that they're going to lose this one in a close battle all the way up until the end, where I think Birmingham pulls ahead in the fourth quarter and ends up winning by double digits. But I think it won't reflect the quality of play Michigan has.
Yeah, I think that Birmingham will not get fooled by those sort of outside sweep and screens that the other team got fooled by. So I'm going to also go with Birmingham, and I actually think it's not going to be that close a game.
Interesting. And so this time we do have back-to-back games. I'm guessing Saturday they're trying to schedule around March Madness finals, or I'm not really sure what the scheduling is about. I think maybe they would have crammed games into Sunday more if it was more of a March Madness thing. But whatever, at 4 p.m. in Washington, D.C. at Audi Field, we have the Houston Roughnecks visiting the D.C. Defenders. And you start this one off because I think this is going to be a very interesting game.
It's going to be interesting, and right now I'm feeling very negative about this game, that this might be a 3-0 game at the end. I think that DC is just a little bit more together than Houston, and we already saw Reuben Foster get dinged up in this game. And if he gets dinged up again, that whole team, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, their line is pretty good, but that defense, he's like their Ray Lewis. I mean, he's their playmaker. I think everything on him, and I saw absolutely nothing out of their offense. So I'm going to go with DC, despite me not liking DC and continuing my boycott of their merchandise. I'm going to go with DC to win this one. But I trust me, if DC loses again, I'm never buying DC merchandise.
And you know what? If they win, you might have to reconsider that. I want to play devil's advocate here just to have some fun, but I'm with you. I don't know. I just don't like the way that Houston team's built. I do think DC is better than the way that they played week one. I think I took 3 road teams, so we got to go with 1 home team. I'll keep it short. I do think DC wins. I think that they actually rebound in a big way from last week. I think their offense puts it together a little bit more. I think their defense stays strong, and I think that they win this game pretty handedly. Not necessarily a high-scoring game, but I don't know if Houston's going to be able to score that much at all. So I'll actually give you a prediction here with the score. I'm going to go with 22-6. Very weird score, but 22-6, and I'll take DC. So we are in agreement on 3 of the 4 games. The only game that we're split on is the Arlington game. I take Arlington, you take St. Louis, so that'll be fun. We'll keep track of this, but I don't have many more closing thoughts. It's almost 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, and it's a work night, so I got to figure out dinner. I didn't plan this out accordingly.
Yeah, same. So, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the 11 people who are watching, because we had something, I think, north of that before we had our technical glitch. So either you came back and found us again, or we, had more people than that watching. And you're the lucky ones, because I can't put out an audio podcast this week because it would be broken into 2 spots and it won't make any sense. So no audio pod this week unless I can figure out a way to recover that and splice them together. And that just sounds like a lot of work. So, so everybody who wants to listen to it, or friends that want to listen to it, just go on YouTube. Unpopular Review Sports, not Unpopular Review Entertainment, not Unpopular Review Wrestling, Unpopular Review Sports, and that's where you'll find us. And you can like and you can subscribe and hit that notification bells. You can subscribe to Entertainment and Wrestling. I'm on both those networks as well from time to time. Tonight I'm doing Raw after Raw. So if you haven't had enough of me yet, you can watch me tonight around 11:10 talking about Raw. It should be hot. And Raw's already an hour in, but don't worry, I always start about an hour and 20 minutes, and then I fast forward through commercials and recaps and stuff.
You gotta skip the commercials.
I've been watching wrestling 50 years. I think I can fill in the blanks okay. Anyway, if you want to follow me on social media, X is at Icarus Fell. I hope you check out my wrestling podcast, Hammerlock Hangover. I hope you check out my non-wrestling podcast, Garden of Doom and Garden Views. Garden of Doom is the one that Jake alluded to with mythology. Garden Views tends to be more science-based, legal, business. Things are a little bit more grounded. And I've got some really exciting guests coming up for Garden of Doom. Very excited. John White from Craigenforge agreed to come back on. Mark Booth, who wrote the book on the secret wisdom, after studying it for 33 years, he's coming on. So I've got some fun stuff. I just interviewed a British actor who might be my new best friend. He's been in. He's going to be in House of Dragon. He was in Fury with Brad Pitt. I mean, he's done some things. So there's that. And tomorrow night on YouTube at 8 o'clock, I'm returning to Tooneytown Wrestling for the Tooneytown Wrestling Roundtable, the newest hit. So joining Marvin the Movie Monster on all the wrestling news. So WrestleMania, CM Punk's interview, Tony Khan's latest meltdown, the Bray Wyatt documentary. It made me cry. I don't cry a lot about things, but Bray Wyatt, yeah. So that's a lot. Jake, where can they find, follow, and then support you?
Well, Follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called these days, Jake_Littman. Really, I'm mainly talking MMA there. There's a big week in MMA here. PFL on Thursday, UFC Saturday, CFFC grappling on Thursday, a whole lot of other stuff going on. So definitely go ahead and check me out there. And you know, the Orioles, they just got their first out of the bottom of the ninth, up 1. So I'm definitely going to catch that before dinner. But if you got any dinner suggestions, let me know, because there's nothing open past 9 o'clock around here. But I definitely am going to be active on Twitter. So if you want to watch MMA interviews, check out Behind the Cage Door. But really, I'm only on Twitter nowadays. So that's what I've got for y'all. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you sticking around for both halves of these videos. We went longer than we wanted to. Again, we'll work on trying to condense these a little bit. Thank you to Ray for coming in on the show, giving us your firsthand experience and talking about the San Antonio Brahmas. We'd love to bring more people in from more cities and just continue to talk about the sport we love.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks very much. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, fans. Thank you, everyone. Please share and spread the love. Let people know the show exists. We are a private podcast, and we'd like to, you know, it's a new league, so hopefully we can get a pretty good following. Anyway, enough from us, Jake. Jake said we went long. He's right. We did go long. We both have stuff to do. So thank you very much for tuning in, and you'll see us next week. This will be our regular time, 7:30, right here on Unpopular Review Sports.